Hello, everyone. I hope you're doing happy. I hope you're staying safe. I hope you're doing well, and I hope you're doing overall blessed. We are going to be doing a book review of the Chris Kennedy book, Red Tide: The Chinese Invasion of Seattle. This is available on Amazon, and you can get it in both paperback and audio book form. We're going to be talking about the production. We're going to be talking about the characters. We're going to be talking about the story. And we're also going to be talking about the general information of the book. And then finally, we're also going to be talking about overall some things I did not like about the book. And then just give you a basic review score of it. So please sit back, relax, grab yourself something to eat, grab yourself something to drink. And let's talk about the Chris Kennedy book, Red Tide: The Chinese Invasion of Seattle. So, just some basic general information about the book. First off, it is written by Chris Kennedy. He is a Webster Award winner as well as a 3-time Dragon Award winner. And he is best known for writing books in the fantasy or science fiction genre type of books. This is available on Amazon in both audiobook form as well as paperback book form. It is 285 pages long again in the paperback book form. And it does have an about an author page. It does have a list of characters and their jobs in the book. It has the story. And it has a preview of the next book in the series. It does not have a glossary and it does not have pictures. And the best way I would describe this book is, if you like the movie Red Dawn or those type of movies, that's the way I would describe this book. Is in that vein of Red Dawn, Invasion of Seattle, Tomorrow When the War Began. Those post-apocalyptic invasion United States types of books. So now that we got the basic information of the book out of the way, let's talk about the overall review. So first off, let's look into production. And what I mean by production is how well written is the book. And the book is very well written. You know, I didn't really notice a whole lot of grammatical mistakes. His sentence structure is really good. The chapters, I will say, is the real down point of this. But there are spaces in between. So that if you're reading this at an airport, you know, you don't have long to go before there's a spot where you can kind of stop and, you know, go about your day, then come back to it later on. Now, I will say the chapters themselves are really fairly long, but there are gaps, like, in the book, like places where you can kind of just stop and just move about your day. So that is a good thing, okay? You don't want chapters or too long without there being some type of place where you can kind of put your bookmark and go about your day. But at the same time, you don't want chapters so short that you can't really do or tell a story without going on to the next chapter, okay? And when he does go on to a full-on next chapter, not just a gap, you know why, okay? There's different chapter titles for it. But I like the gaps, and I liked, you know, the overall chapter length. It's just sometimes the chapters can get a little long, but having those gaps in there where it transitions from one character to another is okay. It means you can just put it in there and go about your day. So I do like that about the book in general. Another thing I liked about the book is he really did seem to know the Seattle area. Okay? He really did seem to know a lot about the Seattle area. That area around Seattle and all that. So either he did his research around that area, or he actually lives in that area. And I'm not sure which would it be. Okay? I'm not very familiar with Chris Kennedy. In fact, this is my first Chris Kennedy book. Okay? So I'm just going to be flat out honest with you. But yeah, like, he really does seem to know the Seattle area because he does talk about, you know, certain interstates. He does talk about certain towns. He does talk about certain places in the Seattle area. And he also seems like he did do his research on the technologies. You know, he's not using outlandish technologies. He's using technologies that seem like they could exist today, and they probably do exist today. But he's also using techniques inside the book. And what I mean by that is there are characters that use certain techniques inside the book that really do happen today. Okay? That really can happen today. So he doesn't use technologies that take you out of the story. He doesn't use techniques that take you out of the story. So that's also a good thing about this book. Overall, I have to say the production is really good on this book. He did a really good job on the production of this book, on the telling of the story, in terms of telling the story. Okay, I like the little gaps in between the chapters. And while I do think the chapters can be kind of long, that's okay as long as you have those little gaps in there where you can read a section, and then if you got to run off somewhere and do something, you could put a bookmark there and come back and start a whole new section. So I really do think that the overall production value of the book is really good. So, let me talk about the characters now. So, first off, there's nothing inherently wrong with these characters. Okay? There's nothing really inherently wrong with these characters. It's just we've seen them all before, you know. You've got the ex-military guy who's got a cabin full of weapons that people call paranoid. You've got the naive people, like the college student who's walking along campus. You've got the Navy people. You've got the bad guys. You've got all these people. It's just we've seen them all before. Okay? And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's not necessarily a good thing either. But my main problem with the characters is that sometimes their reactions does not match their character. I mean, if I'm a college student and I'm walking along campus and I see guys parachute out of the sky, I am going to ask my friend what's going on, but I'm still going to kind of be watching them for a little bit and kind of backing away. Alright? You know, I mean, sometimes the reactions and their actions to certain things just don't really seem to match the character. Okay? And maybe that's for story or whatnot, but like, to me, it just didn't. Sometimes their actions did not really match the type of character that he was going for. Okay? It just didn't, you know? And that's not. I'm not saying that that's necessarily a bad thing. I mean, it didn't take me out of the story. It's just when you're sitting there describing a college student, you expect them to react a certain way. Okay? When you're just sitting there describing a Navy man or a fighter pilot, you expect them to react a certain way. But when they don't react that certain way, you're kind of going back and saying, well, why do they react like that? You know? So I'm not exactly saying the characters are bad. It's just that sometimes they have a tendency of not reacting in a way that you would expect or should expect from the type of person that he's trying to describe. So now let's talk about the story portion of this book. And to really do a good story review of this book, I do have to spoil it. So from this point forward in the book review, there will be a spoiler warning on the screen. Okay? So from this point forward, there will be a spoiler warning in this section. So if you don't want to be spoiled about any of the story details of this book, if you don't want to be spoiled about the overall story of this book, then please skip this section, okay? But there will be a spoiler warning for this section of the book review. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, you have been warned. So let's talk about the story. So the basic overall story of this book is this. is China wants to retake Taiwan. And in order to retake Taiwan, they have to keep the United States out of it. So in order to accomplish that, they invade Seattle and basically hold the citizens of the greater Seattle area hostage. Okay? And so they invade Seattle. Alright? Now, you can basically break this book down into two sections. The first section is the lead up to the invasion. When they've made the decision, okay, we're going to do it, and they start putting the pieces in place to do this. Okay? And this is kind of as far as story goes, this is kind of a trudge to get through, you know. If you really want to get into the action of the book, you won't get into it till the second half of the book. But the first part of the book kind of makes way for the second part of the book. So while it is kind of a trudge to go through, it is kind of interesting at the same time to see how everything was put in place for the invasion. Okay? The second half of the book is where it really starts. When they start landing troops and, you know, actually doing the invasion. Okay? And when it comes to story, this is where I have the most problems with the story. So, my main problems with the story come in the second part of the book. Now, let me say, the invasion itself is done right. Okay? They black out the cell network. They black out the power. They cut the internet. I mean, they basically isolate the Seattle area for the invasion, which is what you're supposed to do. Okay? It hampers command and control and all that. And this is from someone who's not military, who's not police, who's not in that world. Okay? I'm just a regular civilian. Alright? But throughout the invasion, there are moments that just do not make sense. Okay? Literally do not make sense. I'll give you an example. During the invasion, the Chinese have taken all the military bases in the Seattle area. Okay? Smart. Smart thing to do right there. But at one of the military bases, you have soldiers coming back from off-site maneuvers. Basically, they were doing maneuvers in the mountains. They were coming back. Instead of capturing them and their equipment, the Chinese basically tell them to get out of their trucks and go back to Seattle. Instead of capturing them or shooting them, they basically tell these special forces, these National Guard, and these regular Army guys to go back into Seattle. From a common sense point of view, it just seems like if that was me, I would bring these guys on base, I would capture them, and I would hold them, and I would use the ammunition they brought with them to basically resupply my own soldiers in case things go wrong. Okay? That's something I would do. And then I would go and hold their families. Or if holding them would be too much of a risk or maybe would not make sense or whatnot, I just line them up and shoot them. Because at this point, you've already broken Geneva Convention in other parts of the city. Just, go full bore on it. It just didn't make sense that you would have these soldiers out in the population. Because no matter what the TV says, because at some point the Chinese do make a statement about military units operating in the area. No matter what they say, you are going to have vets. You are going to have National Guard. You are going to have these guys right here fighting back. Even if something as simple as sending intelligence back to higher command, they are going to fight back. Okay? So, the invasion itself was done right. It's just there are certain points of it that just do not make sense to me. Okay? In other books, they do. It made sense. But something like this just did not make sense to me. And maybe I'm missing something. It just did not make sense to me. Another problem I had with the story was that it just seems like at the beginning of the invasion, the Chinese do everything right and the Americans do everything wrong. Okay? No invasion throughout history has gone perfect. And this happens to be the first one. I just don't see it. Okay? I literally don't see it. The only problem that I remember the Chinese having in this book was that one of their SAM launchers got jammed on the ship, and it took a little while for it to get off the ship. That's literally the only problem. Okay? There would have been resistance once the news hit the fan. There would have been resistance. And what I mean by that is, once people realized that something weird was going on, you would have seen police on the streets. You would have seen fire on the streets. You would have seen people, when they see, plumes of smoke coming out of the sky from SAM launches, they would know something is going on, and they would have started getting the heck out of Dodge. Okay? And when they got turned around by these Chinese forces, they would have realized something was going on. And you would have had pockets of chaos breaking out. That didn't happen here. I mean, literally, they make it out where the Chinese can do no wrong and the Americans can't do anything right. And I just did not like that about the book, okay? Maybe that's just my personal preference, but no invasion in history has gone off perfectly, and they expect this one to go off without a hitch. Nah, I just can't see it happening. Okay? Now, in the book, there is a moment of resistance by a veteran, okay, who's no longer in the military but has military experience. So there is one moment of resistance, but you would see a lot more chaos, a lot more people panicking and realizing, hey, something's going on here before the actual broadcast than you do in this. Because, if you're sitting there at home and you're seeing missiles shoot up into the sky, you're going to realize something is going on. And you're either going to start shutting your doors and stuff, or you're going to, start running for the hills. It's as simple as that. That didn't happen until the actual news broadcast. So, maybe that's just my own personal preference, but he made the invasion seem too perfect. Okay? And like I said before, this is book 1, so maybe in book 2 we'll see more of that. Of really, the invasion happened perfectly, but then the aftermath is still kind of catching on. But, he just made the invasion seem too perfect from my current point of view. So, now let me talk about what I liked and did not like elsewhere in the book. So, for one thing, there's not a whole lot of politics in this book, and I'm really glad for that. That's something I really did like. That they didn't really put a whole lot of focus on the politics of the book. Now, with a book like this, you do have to have some politics into it, okay? But really, the whole politics side of this whole thing really comes down to 2 or 3 scenes. Literally, 2 or 3 scenes in the book. And I'm really glad for that, okay? They just focused on the invasion. They did not focus on all the politics behind the invasion. What's all going on behind the invasion and all that. Another thing I liked about the book is they really kept it in the United States, okay? Now, this book, whole premise is about Taiwan. But they really did keep the majority of the book in the United States. There are a few scenes where characters are describing what's going on elsewhere in the world, including Taiwan and Japan and elsewhere. But really, they do keep the hard points of this book in the United States, which I do think it is important to do that. Now, one thing I did not like about this book was the fact that it did not have a glossary. I can understand not having pictures. But if you're going to have a character sheet, which this does, okay, you should have a glossary. Alright? Because not everyone knows what a J-20 is. Not everyone knows what an S-200 or S-300 system is. Not everyone knows what a bullpup rifle is. And these are described in the book. But it would have been better if they had a glossary. You know, books like this, these, I guess you would call them prepper, post-apocalyptic, invasion American novels, really need to have a glossary or a glossary of military terms standard with them. Okay? I'm not asking for pictures. I think pictures would be good, don't get me wrong. But, you know, people don't want to have to Google a term every 5 minutes that they don't know because it comes up in the book. Okay? And if you've never heard terms like a J-20 or an F-22 or F-35, okay, you'll get a little description in the book. But if you really are like a visual person and you can't really visualize what that looks like, you're going to be Googling a lot or using Bing a lot. So I really felt that they should have added a glossary of terms to this book. Okay? I mean, if you're going to add character sheet, you might as well add a glossary. I really think not having a glossary in this book really is a letdown for this book. So in conclusion, 3 things really bring this book down. The first being the trudge you have to go through the first half of the book. Now, the first half of the book is necessary. I am not going to deny that. It sets it up for the second half of the book. Okay? But the real fun begins in the second half of the book. Okay? But you still got to get through that first part of the book. And it can be kind of a trudge. Okay? Because there's not a whole lot of action. There's mainly... The first part of the book is mainly character development and setting up for the second part of the book. Another thing that really holds this book back is the fact that there is no glossary. Now, I understand that mainly people in the military will probably be reading this book, but not everyone. And these type of books that detail a invasion or military heavy fiction or post-apocalyptic or prepper or those type of books, okay, really need a glossary of terms. Okay, at minimum they need a glossary of military terms. So that way you won't have to be going to Google every 5 minutes to know what a J-20 looks like, to know what an F-35 looks like, to know what F-22 looks like, to know what a bullpup rifle is. So I really do think they should have put a glossary of terms in this book, and it really would help people who are not all tuned into the military stuff. And finally, the third thing that really holds this book back is those small moments, really those small moments that make absolutely no sense from a common sense point of view. Okay? They don't happen often, but they do happen at key points in the story, and I really do think they do bring this book down a lot. So, outside of those key moments, okay, and outside of the other things I described, this is a good book. I would give this, where 1 is absolutely horrible and 10 is a masterpiece, I would give this a 6. Okay? If it wasn't for those 3 main points, this would probably be a 9. Okay? But those 3 main points really do bring this book down. So I would really say that this is a book that maybe you find in the airport or somewhere. You don't have nothing to read, you can read it. Okay? So yeah, this is a good book. I don't feel like I wasted my money or anything. This is a good book. I really had a good time reading it. It's just there are some key points about this book that really bring it down in terms of score and in terms of enjoyability. But really, the second half of the book really did save this, and makes me want to get the next book in the series, which I probably will do eventually. But yeah, if I wanted to give this book a score, I would give it a 6 out of 10. So that was my book review of the Chris Kennedy book, Red Tide, The Chinese Invasion of Seattle. Please check out some of my other videos over on YouTube and Odyssey. Thank y'all for watching this book review. I hope you all are doing good. You all stay safe, stay well, stay happy. And I will see y'all in the next video and in the next stream. Laters.